connection. Our next speaker is a PhD researcher at King's, Sinem Görücü, who when I joined King's, I'm the only person who is officially mainly, number one thing is games research and informatics. But there are lots of people in informatics who do research that overlaps with games or uses games, or they're interested in getting into games research and things like that. When I found out about this project in particular, I was really looking forward to finally getting to hear about it and to share it with more people. So I'm really grateful to Sinem. Are you ready to go?
I think so. Oh, okay, it's working.
Fantastic. I'll pass over to you then.
Cool, thanks a lot. Let me fix this quickly. Okay. Hi, I'm Sinem, and I'm a researcher, designer, educator, and also a community organizer. And I'm working at the intersections of AI, data science, intersectional feminism, design, and creativity. And along with those, I'm also a PhD student in the Department of Informatics at King's. Working on right now visualizing the environmental footprint of machine learning. And I'm wearing a couple hats, and I'm also a project coordinator for UN Women UK, working on feminist data and AI literacy campaign, and also leading a small organization called Feminist Design. So a lot of feminism you're gonna hear. However, I actually have a background in architecture and urbanism. And I feel like actually I might be the most junior speaker today when it comes to games. But I believe Mike saw some potential and there should be a reason I'm here, I hope. And today I will be actually talking about a past project where we used games for urban design research. And this research was done by Yorhia Panayitodu, who is also a lecturer at King's, myself, Eslam Nofal, Müge Akkar Ercan, and Andrew van der Meuren. And interestingly, actually, this project was the start of my career shift from architecture and urbanism to human-computer interaction, and data visualization, data physicalization, and then, my curiosity kept growing and growing on algorithmic justice and data justice and the role that design and creativity can play in those. And Co-gnito is actually an abbreviation from collective cognitive mapping. It is a participatory physicalization game for urban mental mapping, so it's a board game. It's tangible, not digital. I guess that's the uniqueness of my talk today. And in other words, it is a gamified data physicalization methodology that aims to support collaborative urban mapping, urban mental mapping for research purposes. And talking of board gaming and urbanism, actually, board games are increasingly utilized in participatory urban planning as interactive tools that engage communities in the design and decision-making processes by simulating urban environments, and some of these games actually allow stakeholders to explore potential development scenarios, fostering collaborative problem solving and giving residents a tangible voice in shaping their neighborhoods sometimes. And these approaches make complex planning issues way more accessible and encouraging a shared understanding of urban challenges and facilitating inclusive, democratic planning outcomes. However, our approach to Co-gnito was a comparatively new way of utilizing board games in the field of urbanism because our core focus was to use it not as a problem-solving tool, but as a research material itself to understand people's urban perceptions and create their urban mental maps. And when I talk about urban mental maps, I was also super surprised to hear Lynch's name at Kate's talk. The field of environmental psychology actually has shown how subjective experience of physical environments like cities can be captured in urban mental maps. And that means we all experience a physical space around us by creating cognitive representations of complex spatial settings in our minds, basically, and familiarize ourselves with it. And to understand those maps, geography and urbanism scholars developed a set of methods to elicit the subjective experiences of inhabitants so that those could be taken into account during the urban design processes. And these urban maps can be represented and investigated through a variety of methodologies, such as asking someone to draw a sketch map of an area or describe that area, or asking someone to name as many places as possible in a short period of time, just to basically understand how people perceive the space, what can they memorize, and what do they pay attention to, and so on. And again, Lynch. Some of the most significant contributors to the field comes from an urban design scholar called Kevin Lynch, and who, unlike the technocratic planners and urbanists of his time in the mid-1900s especially, he advocated for a social planning attitude, and he examined maps of city spaces outlining what city features inhabitants were memorizing and what they were overlooking and stuff. And accordingly, again, as Kate explained, he classified 5 types of urban imageability elements that together are able to semantically represent urban mental maps. The elements were like, first, paths, which are like routes of movement, such as streets, sidewalks, and alleys. Second was nodes, strategic focus points. Third one was edges, which are boundaries and breaks in continuity. Landmarks, which are external points of orientation. That are easily identifiable, and districts that are areas characterized by common characteristics. In his work, Lynch instructed participants to create rough hand sketches as if describing the city to a stranger, focusing on major features without aiming for accuracy. Building on the existing literature and Lynch's imageability elements, we designed Co-gnito as a gamified methodology for urban mental mapping while utilizing gaming mechanics and storytelling to gain actually a deeper understanding of people's perceptions of urban spaces, not only through the sketch maps, as it has been done, not only the sketch maps that they provide or the places that they memorize, but actually through learning the actual first-person stories within a collective setting to construct a collective data physicalization and physicalize their mental maps through the game. And in this work, there were 2 very core bits that were new and unique for the urban mental mapping. We believe the first one was physicalization. If you're not super familiar with physicalization is basically a 3-dimensional physical representation of data for analytical purposes. Forming an accessible medium through which sense-making of relatively complex types of data can be encouraged. And intangible nature of physicalization actually allows for more natural and inviting types of encoding and interacting with data rather than 2D representations, which potentially also leads to more effective, reflective, and social forms of engagement to enable group-based sense-making. And the second one was, of course, gaming. Inspired by the use of games in participatory design, we did not only focus on producing, physicalizations that are representative of the collective mental maps, but we also investigated how physicalization can be enhanced with the game mechanics we apply. So we designed Co-gnito as a board game to be played by 4 people, from living in the same urban context or sharing the same urban context, to sit around a table for around 2 hours, form 2 groups of 2 people, and collectively construct their physicalizations while also competing against each other. And as a board game, we aim to keep the design as simple as possible, but also informative as possible for us to be able to get consistent results and data out of it. And as a board game, sorry. So 1 second. Yes. So we designed a variety of different elements while designing the board game, and the game board tile is the core thing, which is basically what Lynch was using as papers. Instead of papers, we thought we should come up with like a tabula rasa and a modular placeholder. Allowing participants to map freely and assign their own locations onto it rather than displaying a unified base. And those modular tiles were, of course, to be aggregated and expanded in a discrete manner. So that was giving participants some, freedom to map whatever they are willing to map rather than, providing a defined space. And following the Lynch's 5 imageability elements, we designed the 5 physical tokens to be placed on the game board as well. The physical appearance of each element embodied its actually realistic counterpart, so that, for instance, a path resembled a line, whereas an edge looked like a 3-dimensional physical boundary. And paths and edges were also available in 2 different sizes to allow both orthogonal and diagonal placement. So we tried to make sure we can design the tokens in a way that people can easily build their physicalizations just like they're drawing on paper. And besides the imageability elements, we also wanted to understand how people were feeling in the space that they're mapping. So we designed a dedicated feeling card set, which graphically represent coziness and inspiration feelings on 4 pairwise combinations. And the scoring mechanism of the game was working through the upside-down point crosses that were placed between those squares to put the feeling cards. I'm giving so much detail because I think these are interesting bits. But when all of these things are coming together to form a collective data physicalization of participants' urban mental maps, and once the game starts, each player was invited to recount a spatial experience by means of first-person storytelling, which is a generative gaming method. So the player had to first describe a personal experience, a story about the location of interest. So we were asking them, can you tell us a story is structured along a when, what, why sequence, and then map that story and your perception of the space that story happened in on the board game by using the limited number of tokens. And while doing that, they were also supposed to pay attention to the points they can get, because they were only able to get the points that their story is touching. We actually strategically, while doing this pointing system, we strategically adopted a dual scoring strategy. In the first round, they were only able to open the point first, and the second person who's coming there was able to take it if they say another story about it, because there we were also trying to make sure we can get as detailed data as possible about a certain place. So it's not no place is visited only once, but multiple people come talk about that place, so we understand what are the different experiences. So we were using the scoring mechanic in a way to make sure we can get enough data. And then in the second round, it became more of a chance-based, while they were able to open it and get it immediately, but there were also minus points, so it was always keeping the competition somehow alive. And I think I have a little video on how to. Oops, very loud. Then the same process, but with a different scoring mechanic. Okay. Yes. And we deployed actually Co-gnito in the context of 2 different university campuses in 2 different countries, which were chosen to differ in typology, morphology, and scale, to also to see how successful it is in different contexts. And we used the data physicalization pipeline to analyze the recordings of the session, the produced outcome maps, and post-game surveys and interviews to see if this is actually a successful method to do some urban mental mapping, and if the gamification and storytelling is actually useful for the aims that we were trying to adopt them for. And while our findings as a mental mapping method was aligned with urban design literature, we also came across a result that wasn't our initial focus. And I didn't want to, walk you through all the results and learnings we have been through, but I wanted to focus on the interesting bit for us. Because what we have seen is, although we designed it as a research methodology, we have seen it that the collaborative process of the game and methodology was more appreciated than the actual game or competition itself. And participants were more often more interested in hearing each other's stories and mapping those all together rather than focusing on the competition or getting points. While the competition was still keeping the enthusiasm high in the room, but sometimes we were hearing stuff like, if I tell a story here, I might get a point, but I want to tell a story here because this is a fun one. So it was really interesting that people were enjoying collective construction of urban mental map physicalization that much. And we have learned a lot about how this process helped them learning from each other's experiences and creating some sort of empathy, and also reflecting on collective memory, collective sense-making, and also, like, most of the time, civic awareness. Noticing stuff that they didn't notice about before. It was also commonly verbalized that their environmental understanding was raised through the game. So the learnings for us was like the collaborative construction of a physicalization can be actually mined for the rich discussions it can provoke, not only for the outcome, but also it can support civic engagement, awareness, and citizen participation, and constructivist teaching, and community building, and also cross-disciplinary sense-making. So if you are interested, you can access the paper here, but I didn't want to wrap here, actually. I wanted to continue a little. Because as I said, this was like a moment I was finishing my master's, so this was like a research residency I did in Belgium. And then I wasn't sure which direction to go after that. But then with the learnings of that research, I got very interested in the power of playful experiences when it comes to building communities and civic engagement, and also like literacy or enhanced understanding. So I started to think on how participatory physicalization, gaming, and play as methods for collaboration, coordination, cooperation, civic engagement, literacy, community building can work, and how can I work on that maybe. And where did this bring me is interesting, because as I started to engage with more human-centered data approaches, it was also the same year the book Data Feminism was published by Catherine D'Ignazio and Lauren Klein. I would highly suggest if you haven't heard before. It was like a life-changing book for me. I was like, all the different interests I was having at that moment was put in front of me. And my career actually started to evolve into a way that I started to combine all these things that are exciting me, which were AI, data, but not from a technical perspective, but how intersectional feminism intersects with that. And again, while talk of intersectional feminism, social justice, and it's also a personality thing, but I have been always an advocacy and literacy person. So how can I actually use my background in creativity and design to combine these things in a way? And that was also the time when COVID started. So I had a lot of time sitting at home on my bed, watching YouTube videos, attending online workshops and stuff. I think it was also, it was harsh times, of course, but it was also an amazing time to break the barriers into some information, because suddenly everything went online. And I was like joining talks all around the world, all day, like different time zones. During those times, I decided maybe I can push further on this a little. And I started a fellowship program with Goethe Institute, where they were focusing on again, creativity for ethical AI. And as part of that fellowship program, I designed a web page, which was to communicate how does algorithmic bias happen in language models from a feminist perspective, and how can we make this approachable. It is still a project on the way, not finished yet. But it was basically a riddle-solving play. It wasn't a game, but it was like a playful experience that people can go and experiment and see. I can share the video briefly. So it was, again, a storytelling. Maybe some of you know this riddle already, but it is like throwing the sexist biases that we all have to our faces, and then explaining how those biases are reflected in AI. and also collecting some data about, asking people why did you assume that doctor was a male, and then asking, would you guess why AI might be regenerating this sort of a bias and stuff. So after that, of course, I didn't stop there. Things grew, but I also turned, meanwhile, all these ambitions of mine into an organization called Feminist Design. Then, as part of Feminist Design, one day, I saw a tweet which was creating two different circles. One was a giant circle saying people who talk about AI, and one was a really tiny dot saying people who are actually working on AI, and AI researchers shared this. And Sasha Costanza-Choc, again, if you don't know them, I suggest you can check them, author of Design Justice book, took that image and then changed it and said, this giant circle is people who are going to be most most affected by AI, and these are people who are working on AI. So this is how we should change the perspective. And it was very nice, but it was also a moment for me. This is a meme, actually. Why don't we use memes to utilize memes to communicate some of these very core things? Then I started a project called Memetivism for Feminist Data Literacy, which also became a collaboration with Yorhia again, my colleague from the Co-gnito paper. And what we did is we created a workshop structure, a meme co-design methodology to create memes for feminist data and AI literacy. So communicating some of the ethical concerns when it comes to data and AI practices through memes as an engaging but also fun and approachable medium. And it's also, doesn't scare people. Because when you talk about AI literacy, people would distance themselves sometimes, thinking, it's too much for them or it's too much technical knowledge and stuff. But it doesn't need to be. If it's affecting all of us, it should be something accessible and engaging. So we started to generate memes and start a meme library. We have a set of prompt cards about some of the concerns that we should be concerned about. And we have like a framework explaining how can you, adopt this framework and create memes. But one of the interesting things with this project, again, because memes are internet memes, right? We all see them on internet. Have you ever seen a physical meme? Have you? You did? Okay. It's not as common, right? Physical memes are not as common. But the thing is, when I started to run these workshops, I wanted to make it accessible for people who cannot, really use maybe computers or who doesn't want to use computers and stuff. So I printed a bunch of meme templates and also a bunch of piece of paper, and I brought it there as well. And at the first workshop, I said, okay, here is the digital toolkit. You can use the digital toolkit. Here's the link. Here's the QR code. And here are some also papers if you want to use that as well. And suddenly, everyone went to the tangible kits. And after that moment, we organized more and more workshops. And there were some workshops, no one ever did the digital memes. And that was an interesting learning for me as well, because this workshop was also designed as a co-design methodology where people not do their own memes, but come together and do memes together and discuss that topic. How can we communicate, data surveillance through a meme? They discuss it, then they create the meme together. And it was also proving what we learned at the Co-gnito game. Like, people love tangible interactions and generating these things together, and they enjoy the generating bit more than the task itself. What was also interesting is, actually, 1 second. I actually forgot what I was going to say just now. But anyways, I think I made it clear. Now we're also thinking of turning this into an extensive digital library, but still having this, thought process on how can we actually integrate maybe this physical interaction, and how can we, turn this into a physical activity for everyone as well, that they can do within their communities. And one more thing happened meanwhile. I think this is one of the last bits I'm going to talk about. Last year, I don't know if you ever heard of CSW. United Nations actually have this event called Commission on the Status of Women. It's a yearly meeting. Every year, there's a giant meeting in New York, and everyone from every country, there are delegates coming and discussing the specific theme of that year and focusing on the status of women related to that theme. And last year, it was innovation and technological change, the theme. And I was a delegate for UN Women UK. And after the event, actually, there are some global goals that are being announced, and every country is asked to, progress towards those. And last year, of course, it was stuff like closing the gender digital gap, closing the literacy gap, the digital literacy gap, and stuff. And after that process, the UN Women UK here wanted to do a specific project, a campaign on data and AI literacy through a feminist lens, and I became the project coordinator for that. And scoping the problem in the UK, we started to work on some of the, the creative mediums and methods that we can utilize to reach people, especially women and girls of disadvantaged backgrounds. And one day, I think they have seen this project, although it's not the thing that I'm most proud of. They like this playful approach, and they came up with this idea of, what if we actually use games for communicating the things that you want to communicate about data and AI practices? What about we use games for feminist AI features and equip people with crucial knowledge through designing serious games? And now we are working on organizing a game jam. It's something super new. So there were a lot of talks today on AI for games today, but what we're doing is the opposite, games for AI. How can we use games to talk about AI in a fair and just way? Because everyone loves games, right? Like what else we love is playing games together and creating together, as I learned through all these projects. So this is something new and I'm super excited about. And one last bit is, as part of feminist design, we actually started a new project earlier this year as well, with dear Sinem Görücü and Deniz Ezgi Kurt. The feminist gaming project is a critical research project that is exploring how intersectional feminist theory can reshape digital gaming culture and design. So this time, it is like, okay, we do games, we focus on games, we use games, we love games, but what is wrong with games, yeah? Rooted in the matrix of domination, we investigate how games actually reflect and reinforce societal structures around gender, race, class, and so on, and rather than seeing games merely as entertainment, actually, we view them as a cultural artifact that both mirror and influence the social power dynamics, and drawing on feminist critiques of media, digital cultures, and politics of representation, we analyze how control mechanisms are embedded in game mechanics, aesthetics, and processes. So by examining content, form, but also labor practices, the project will be mapping the feminist concerns in games and exploring how feminist HCI might reframe digital play toward, care, equity, and power redistribution. And it will be involving a series of participatory research workshops. So it's not going to be, again, a research behind closed doors, but we're trying to turn it into a community research. That was all. I hope it was good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Sinem. I'm really, really glad that you finally had a chance to talk about this project, and it was really awesome to hear about it. We have time for a question? Yes, let me back around.
Sinem, did I get your name
yes,
right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It was a pleasure. I think your presentation was a brilliant insight into the feminist side, the data side of it. My question is about the meme-tivist workshop. Has the participant in the meme activists talked about like NFT and other problems like they see with the commercialization of memes and like Neon Cat or the completely chaotic malleability of our favorite memes and being. What was the conversation like? I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, we don't have such specific conversation, but what you're talking is also about like meta memes. You're right,
yes,
memes
yes,
about
memes, yes.
about memes. So we had some also conversations around that, but it's actually an interesting topic. Maybe it can be something to add to our card deck even, commercialization of it.
Okay.
But also one more thing is we are hoping to make this project open access, and we will be asking for contributions for further cards. So
okay.
that could be easily one of the cards. Thanks for that.
Okay. Sorry. My second question is, what can software developers or game developers be able to assist in the grand vision of this? I feel there's a lot of potential in this project of yours, looking at data holistically and the interconnectedness of urban planning and also low-tier gamification of urban life. I would like to hear your takes. What could be the future of this project?
Can you ask again, maybe? I'm not sure if I understood it right.
Okay, sure.
Because the urban bit is
Yes.
like it was like totally a physicalization project. There's no digital aspect of it.
No, okay.
Yeah, I mean there might be in the future, but yeah, that was designed as a tangible thing. But if you're asking like what is the role of like software developers in maybe like the other practices, I'm thinking like feminist data advocacy and stuff.
So you talked about social justice, like women's rights, right? My question is, what can software developers learn from your project and gather this data to critically influence the safety and accessibility for women of different like neurodivergence community, how to cater to them in like certain applications that would be useful? That's my question.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's my thought. There's no one right answer to that, but I'm coming from more like a top-down approach where I believe the community organizing will really push for community-wide literacy and understanding. And once that happens, then we will have the force to push for legislations and laws and political, push. And once that happens, then the big tech corporations can be, pushed further into, paying attention to these things and being accountable for these things. So I'm coming from more like a bottom-up approach. But like for software developers, also there are like a lot of things when you think like in a parallel system. Like first thing is like acknowledging. That's why I also keep giving that example about Sasha Costanza-Choc tweet meme. Because learning that this is not about you do and other people don't understand. This is about you do and the rest of the world gets affected, and you need to acknowledge that and welcome
Okay, thank you for the question. Fun fact: I'm in an open software programming community, so we like to double into